The top business stories live from the Sky News City studio. Fewer jobs were created in the US last month than at any point since June. By how much is the world's biggest economy slowing? Is Elon Musk right? Could AI mean we won't need to work in the future? And how could that transform or shatter lives? And calls for government help to protect people in the private rented sector as new figures show a big increase in rents. Good afternoon. This is Business Live with me, Ian King. Employers in the US created fewer jobs last month than expected, raising concerns that the world's biggest economy is slowing. Well, just 150,000 jobs were created in October. That was fewer than the 170,000 that Wall Street had been expecting. That was the lowest in a single month since June. The US Labour Department also revised down the number of jobs created in September from the previously reported 336,000 to 297,000. Well, it meant that the unemployment rate in the US ticked up from 3.8% in September to 3.9%, a level not seen since January last year. Well, joining me now is Preston Caldwell, who's Chief US Economy at Morningstar Research Services. Preston, welcome to you. Is this good news because it means that the Fed's rate hikes are working, or is it bad news because it means that the economy is losing momentum?
Well, I would say it's premature right now to call it a slowdown. So I think what we see is that the picture painted by the data a month ago that job growth may have been accelerating is disconfirmed by this month's data. So whereas a month ago we saw the trailing 3-month annualized job growth rate at about 2.1%, it now stands at 1.6%. Which is about the job growth that we saw in the middle of 2023. So right now things are holding steady, I would say, but that does clear the way, I think, for the Fed to skip hiking its key policy rate, the federal funds rate, in its upcoming December meeting.
Yeah, that's certainly what the equity markets are saying this afternoon, isn't it? I mean, I wonder how much of an anomaly these numbers are, given that we've had these big waves of car workers' strikes going on. I mean, according to the data, manufacturing jobs actually fell last month as a result of that.
Yes, I think I've seen estimates that subtracted from non-farm payrolls by about 30,000. So that's, only a tenth of a percentage point or so, not a large impact by any means in terms of that growth rate that I cited earlier. So I wouldn't say that that's the main driver of what we're seeing right here. It's interesting that, despite the large uptick in U.S. GDP growth in the third quarter, that firms didn't respond to that by increasing their rate of hiring. So even though firms are very reluctant to lay off workers right now, they're not responding to an uptick in business by increasing their demand for workers.
That's very interesting. Why do you think that is? Why are they not going out and hiring more? Do you think that reflects a more cautious outlook?
Well, I think, to some extent, they're able to do so because of an increase in their productivity, which bodes quite positively on our ability to continue to bring down inflation and also see a normalizing labor market without an outright contraction in the level of economic activity. And so going forward, though, I should say that we do expect GDP growth to slow a bit incrementally while avoiding a recession in the U.S. in 2024, which will lead to further slowdown in the job market and bring wage growth back to normal, which is what the Fed needs to see in order to ensure that inflation is returning to their 2% target.
Well, yeah, you mentioned wages growth. I mean, it was 4.1% up year on year. I mean, that's the slowest rate of growth since June 2021. I mean, it looks like the Fed's medicine's working there.
Right. So you want that wage growth measure to come back to eventually, let's say, 3 or 3.5%, depending on your trend productivity growth assumption. So they're getting very close. There's a few other wage growth measures that are out there. So, we can't feel totally assured yet until the rest of the data comes out, but it is encouraging.
OK, Preston, got to leave it there. Appreciate you joining me today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Now, at the end of the first AI safety summit held in the UK, the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said the achievements made would up the balance in favour of humanity in the race to contain risks from rapid advances in cutting-edge artificial intelligence. But it was his interviewee who stole the headlines. Elon Musk used a discussion with the Prime Minister to outline a potential future dominated by AI. The world's richest man predicted that in the future, AI would make having a job redundant. Some experts have called that unhelpful and sensationalist.
We will have for the first time something that is smarter than the smartest human. And that, I mean, it's hard to say exactly what that moment is, but there will come a point where no job is needed. You can have a job if you want to have a job for sort of personal satisfaction, but the AI will be able to do everything. So I don't know if that makes people comfortable or uncomfortable.
Well, joining me now is Amit Walia, Chief Executive of Informatica, the enterprise cloud data management specialist, which has just reported a 9.8% rise in sales to $409 million for the 3 months to the end of September. Amit, welcome to you. Is Elon Musk being sensationalist?
Well, Ian, thanks for having me. Well, I mean, Elon obviously has very strong points of views. I think the way I look at it is that AI is going to be a tremendous accelerant to the economy. I mean, I think it's underestimated in the long term, short term, and but I don't think that it'll take away everything from humanity. I think that every technology has been able to drive productivity, but I think it will drive productivity. But I think collectively it will help us become a better humanity, and it's also our job to make sure that AI serves us and not the other way around.
But do you think AI will be a destroyer of jobs, as some people think, or is it just going to enable different types of jobs to be created?
I think both will happen. So every time new tech has come, certain jobs have gone, but many new jobs get created. So I think there will be a migration and a move from A to B to C. So I don't think in the net we will grow. I don't think in the net we will reduce.
OK, I mean, looking at your logo there, where data and AI come to life is your corporate slogan there. How are you exactly incorporating AI into what you do?
Well, look, I mean, AI is all about, there is no AI without good data in it, like bringing lots of data, good quality data, and very importantly, putting governance around that. So no model or AI thing becomes smart by itself unless you do all of those things. That's what we do. That's what data management is all about. And that's what Informatica's platform, IDMC, does for a living. And we are enabling companies and customers doing that. And we see tremendous excitement and growth in that area.
Can machine learning, though, ever replace human instinct in areas like data analysis? Are there certain things that a human may be able to do in future better than artificial intelligence?
But look, there are certain things, I look at AI driving productivity and intelligence. And there are certain things that are certain what I call lower end mundane activities that will be eliminated, and it'll make humans a lot smarter. Like, for example, it'll start telling you, do this and do that. That's what our AI Claire Copilot helps our customers today. But at the same time, you need humans to do the last mile, do the important stuff, make the business context, drive the final answer. That AI or ML will not do, and humans are going to do that. So we've paired our AI Claire Copilot with the humans to make them a lot more productive and intelligent.
So looking at your latest numbers, I just referenced them. You're up 9.8% in the latest quarter. How was the mix there? Was that volume or was it price?
Well, no, it was volume for us. For us, the most important thing is that in that number, we're a company that has pivoted 100% to the cloud, and our cloud business grew 37% year over year, which, by the way, exceeded our guidance. And we kind of exceeded all our top line and bottom line metrics for the quarter. In fact, we raised our bottom line metrics for the year. So we feel very good. And if you think about it, that growth is coming from more and more customers using, expanding their usage, new customers coming into our fold. And a very important metric is usage. Our cloud platform, by the way, the usage of that platform grew 60% year over year to 71 trillion transactions a month. So it's about more customers, more usage, other than just pricing.
OK, Amit, we have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Good to see you this afternoon. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Some other business news stories for you now. And Barclays is being sued by US-based investors over its former chief executive Jez Staley's links to the disgraced financier and paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Well, Mr. Staley was recently banned from working in the city by the Financial Conduct Authority for misleading it over his relationship with Epstein. But the class action from US investors filed in a US district court in California alleges that Barclays concealed or made misleading statements to them about the relationship between Mr. Staley and Jeffrey Epstein. The Danish shipping giant Maersk is to cut 10,000 jobs worldwide after reporting a sharp decline in sales and profits. Maersk, which is the world's second largest container shipping group, had already announced plans to cut 6,500 roles this year, but increased that by a further 3,500 after its profits for the 3 months to the end of September came in 94% lower than in the same period last year. The company, which controls around 1/6 of global container trade, blamed a sharp decline in shipping rates due to overcapacity in the market. And shares of Burger King's parent company, Restaurant Brands International, fell by as much as 5% at one point this afternoon after the chain reported weaker quarterly sales growth than expected. The Toronto-based company, which also owns the Popeyes fast food chain and the Tim Hortons coffee and donut chain, said Burger King sales during the 3 months to the end of September were up 7.2% on the same period last year. That was short of the 8.6% that had been expected. And that was despite a 2-year marketing and refurbishment plan called Reclaim the Flame, on which Burger King is spending $400 million. Now, the UK housing shortage is having dramatic effects on the private rented sector. Figures from the Office for National Statistics today show far more rent increases, up 21% for 1/5 of properties compared with 12 months ago. Meanwhile, in London, prices have risen on 77% of properties revisited compared with September last year. Well, joining me now to talk about this is Greg Suman. He's Director of Lettings at Martin Gerrard Estate Agents and President of Arla Property Mark, the professional body for the property sector. Greg, welcome to you. To what do you ascribe this?
Thank you for having me. It's not happened overnight. It started in 2015 when government introduced measures to help tenants get onto the housing ladder. Unfortunately, what we're seeing today is that since then, 330,000 more tenants are in rented property, and in the last 2 years alone, 250,000 landlords have sold.
Yeah.
So it's a supply and demand imbalance, and of course, when there's not enough supply to meet demand, prices go up.
So when amateur landlords sell their properties, what you're saying is these don't end up staying in the rental sector, they go to buyers?
Well, irrespective of where they go at the moment, they may just be sticking around a little bit. But what we do know is that there is not enough property to meet the demand from private tenants. And of course, you've got to remember that private rented sector is plugging the gap that social sector isn't filling. So currently, there are more people renting in the private rented sector than in the social sector. So ultimately, we need more homes. But in the meantime, we need to ensure that the housing providers can continue providing that housing.
Now, I mean, the thing you're specifically referring to here is Section 24, which essentially meant that landlords could only write off their mortgage interest against the basic rate of income tax. Why should they get that relief, though? I mean, it's not like a mortgage holder is able to write off their mortgage interest payments against their tax bill.
Well, you've got to remember that the landlord doesn't live in the property like a mortgage holder who owns the property does. So it is treated as a business for all intents and purposes by the government, with one exception, tax. So if you're taxed on revenue rather than profit, you're essentially taxed on your cost, and that forces rents to go up more than they should.
Sure, but a lot of average amateur landlords, they only own about 1.5 properties anyway, and a lot of this is cases where couples have just got together and they keep the extra property, you know, as a sort of savings bank.
Sure, but as a result, they're providing a house, a roof over their head for families who need it. And I think it's really important not to drive them out before there's an alternative. And right now, we're talking about house building. But we also know that it's not reasonable to expect that to happen overnight.
All right, Greg, I'm afraid we've got to leave it there. We've got a bit of breaking news. Good to see you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that breaking news is that the parents-in-law of the Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf are among the hundreds of people who've been allowed to leave Gaza today. Elizabeth El-Nakla and her husband Najid had travelled to Gaza to visit a sick relative. Humza Yousaf has just released this video statement.
Hugely relieved, of course, and it was a special moment for me to be able to phone up my 14-year-old while she was in her school break to tell her that Granny and Grandpa coming home, and that's a moment that was very special. And we're obviously, as a family, really pleased that they're coming back and they're going to be in relative safety. We're also distressed because the situation continues to be that innocent men, women and children, including some of Nadia's family, like her brother who are still in Gaza, are suffering an unimaginable horror. And that's why, although my mother-in-law and father-in-law are safe and hopefully will be back here in Scotland very soon, we'll continue to raise our voice to call for that ceasefire. I think it's needed now more than ever before.
Well, still to come here on Business Live, we'll have a look at how the markets have finished up this Friday afternoon. It's been a very good week on Wall Street. Don't go away.
That has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides. And it's moving this way.
Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, and it's evident that the boat is seriously overcrowded. This is one of the most severe viruses in the world.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
This is going to be the biggest party Tripoli has ever seen.
That's it, it got us then. There's a lot of action going on, a lot of hits coming in still. We aim to be the best and the most trusted place in news.
Clearly not had very much to eat at all. A lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at her arms. I can put my entire hand round.
This is the cocktail of drugs which the doctors at this hospital have been giving their coronavirus patients. Made for people who want clarity in an uncertain world.
Mother Nature can be vicious, absolutely savage. The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Whoa! Close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
The five of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380. It's like Emirates, it's like better.
Well, the weaker than expected non-farm payrolls figure has hit the US dollar this afternoon. Both the pound and the euro are in line to chalk up big weekly gains against the greenback amid growing expectations. The US Federal Reserve has finished raising interest rates. Sterling up 1.5% against the dollar. That is a big gain in a single session. Sterling also up by 0.2% against the euro. The single currency, meanwhile, up by just over 1% against the dollar. Again, another very big move. On the equity markets, well, European stocks have had a mixed session. The CAC 40 letting the side down. All of the other main continental European indices finishing the day in positive territory. Talking points this afternoon include Siemens Energy, the wind turbine giant, up 9% in Frankfurt. And that is on hopes it's set to receive up to 15 billion euros worth of German government guarantees that will allow it to carry out big infrastructure projects. Well, here in London, as you can see, the FTSE 100 has finished down nearly 0.2%. It would have actually finished in positive territory had it not been for the oil majors Shell and BP. Those two alone have taken 39 points off the index, so the FTSE would have finished up higher in the absence of those two. Among blue chip gainers this afternoon, well, BT continues to attract buyers after its results. Yesterday, BT finishing up 5.75%. It was up 5% yesterday as well, so that's a really good gain over the last 48 hours for BT Group. Another gainer this afternoon to mention is Kingfisher. That's the owner of Screwfix and B&Q, of course. The shares finishing 3.5% to the good following a trading update from its smaller rival Wix, which was well received. Outside the FTSE 100, well, the FTSE Mid 250 is on course to complete its best weekly gain this year, up 1.25% today alone. In percentage terms, well, the leading mid-cap gainer was Wizz Air. That was on the back of some traffic statistics that were published yesterday, finished up just over 10.5% on the day. Another gainer to mention is Currys. Talked about this in our morning programme. The shares there up 4.5%. It sold its business in Greece and Cyprus today for £175 million. Over on Wall Street, all of the major US equity indices are trading to the upside. That's the Nasdaq that you can see on the screen. The one to really mention, though, is the Russell 2000, which is the index of small and mid-cap companies. That is up 9% on the week. There are some fallers to mention, though, and the most eye-catching of the lot is probably Apple. The share's off currently just over 0.75%. Its quarterly results finished last night were disappointing for investors. We mentioned them on our morning programme as well, of course. As for the oil price, that's having a quiet session today. It's on course to suffer a second consecutive weekly fall. A barrel of Brent crude currently trading at $85.61 a barrel. That's off just shy of 1.5% on the day. Well, let's speak to the chief economist at Lazars now, our old friend, George Lagarius. George, welcome to you. I mean, a euphoric response on Wall Street to these non-farm payroll figures. What do you think? Is the optimism being overdone?
You know what? I think a little bit, not in terms of the stoppage of rate hikes. I think the Fed has been pretty clear about that. But there is a little bit of optimism regarding when the rate cuts are going to come. Currently, the market is suggesting they will happen in June. But you know what? Inflation is picking up, or at worst, it's stabilizing around levels that are at least double of what central banks want. So, you know, saying we're going to have rate cuts in June might be on the optimistic side of things. Not saying it's not going to happen, but definitely the more optimistic scenario.
George, historically speaking, when the Fed's engineered a rise in unemployment to north of 4%, the US normally goes into recession. I mean, we're at 3.9 now. It's not a given, though, this time around, surely.
No, because what the US is doing is pro-cyclically, fiscally helping its economy. So it's running a deficit of 6.7, 6.9%, which is bigger than the other deficits. And in essence, what it's doing is they're taking the dollar, which is a global reserve currency, and they're doing what no other country can do right now, which is throw money at the problem. And that's why the US has been growing better than expected. So, you know, of course, you know, that growth might still slow down, but right now, with all that money they're throwing at the problem, the recession is not necessarily the central scenario. Or at least, you know, whatever it's going to be narrow, right? Plus half, minus half, that's not a recession, that's stagnation.
Very big moves in the dollar this week. Both sterling and the euro, as I said, enjoying big weekly gains against the dollar. Is that a blessing or a curse for the European Central Bank and the Bank of England?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag, isn't it? Look, what they can't do is they can't do anything that's very much different from what the Fed does, right? They're going to have to maintain rates as well, and in fact, that's what they really want to do. Now, a stronger currency obviously does a little bit of the tightening for them, so it's helping them make the decision they wanted to make anyway.
But presumably it will worry the ECB in particular. I mean, all those big European exporters, particularly in Germany, they don't want to see a stronger euro against the dollar.
Well, yes, you are right, of course. But honestly, I think the currency is the last of Germany's problems right now. Germany has an ailing industry. The PMIs are nearly 40 for a very long time. It's 50 at 50 you're stagnating, at 40 you're rapidly contracting. So they have to fix bigger problems. And I don't think the currency might make some difference on the side, but that's not going to sell more German cars.
OK, got to leave it there, George. Good to see you as ever. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it from me. I'm back on Monday morning at 11:30 with the next edition of Business Live. Hope to see you then. Cheerio.